Hello listeners, welcome back to another amazing episode of Trifantry Chronicles. We have an ultra special guest today. You have been kind enough to show some love for season 2. We've had 2 episodes where we've spoken to different personalities of cycling, of fitness and various other. But this special episode is focused only on swimming. Yes, swimming. And who else to begin this episode with? We have Nisha Millett with us, the first ever Olympian from India to qualify for swimming in the Sydney Olympics back in 2000. Yes, she is also an Arjuna awardee winner. She has started her own academy where she is a director, the Nisha Millett Academy for swimming, and she has just started another passion project for all the sports lovers. It's called Elevate Performance. Welcome to the show, Nisha. Thank you for agreeing to do this with us.
Hi, Nishan. Thank you. Great to be here today.
Thank you. Your achievements are so many. I probably have not done justice. So if you could just start off, and tell us probably the 5 or 10 things that you've achieved, and why should our listeners be tuned to this episode till the very end?
Well, I think it's not a fairy tale story. Mine started off quite the opposite. I didn't jump into the pool at the age of 6 months and swim like a fish. I actually had a very bad fear of water. By mistake, I was pushed into a small fish pond when I was 5 years old. So I had quite a fear of water and didn't go anywhere near pools, the ocean, anything to do with water till I was about 9 years old. And then my dad said, come on, it's summer. I lived in Chennai at the time. You can imagine how warm Chennai is. You just want to jump into the pool and have a nice refreshing swim. So he convinced me swimming is the best sport in summer. Let's do it. So I went in there, and my first big achievement, I think, was getting over the fear. And this is where some people, now even in these 60s and 70s come and they try and get over their fear. That's why I started my academy, because I know what I went through. I had a really bad coach to begin with. Finally, it was my dad who got me to enjoy the water, play, have fun. And in the process, that's when I fell in love with the sport. Once I started, it was a really, fast trajectory because I was really passionate about swimming. I started training 6 days a week and did that for close to 15 years till I retired. I would say my first big achievement was when I was just 12 years old. So I was still a sub-junior. I won 5 medals at the senior national, competing against girls who are 18, 20. So that's when my parents knew, okay, this is, we really have to take it seriously. And this is when they decided, let's move Nisha all the way from Chennai to Bangalore. So Bangalore has the top swimmers and the top coaches, the best facilities. So that's when I made the big move to come to Karnataka. And from there, I went and represented India in the Asian Games, the World Championships. And later, like you mentioned, I fulfilled my dream, which is to qualify for the Olympics. Till I qualified, people had just gone as a token representative. And nobody had made the qualifying time. So it was great because other swimmers knew, okay, if she can do it, I know it's possible. And post me qualifying, many swimmers have done so. In fact, now we have 2 boys who are very close to the A qualifying, which is the 8th place time of last Olympics, which is great. So the sport is really going up. Another great moment, of course, was receiving the Arjuna Award from the President of India. I was 18. It was one of the most exciting times to go to Rashtrapati Bhavan and to have that honor. A lot of Olympic athletes do it for the love of sport, right? We don't get paid. Swimming is an amateur sport, so there's no prize money. In those days, there was no social media, so a little bit of press and publicity, yes, but we do it because we love it. And another really important part was I had for 2 years after the Olympics, when I was at my peak, I had a very bad back pain. It turned out I had a benign tumor. So one of my main achievements, I think that I hold even as high as my Olympics or the Arjuna Award is getting back post my surgery into swimming. I gave it a good shot. I had surgery in 2002. I had 2 years to train instead of 4 years for the 2004 Olympics. I almost got there. and just narrowly missed qualifying for my second Olympics in Athens in 2004. And that's when I realized, okay, let me take my love for swimming. And it was financially very difficult on me and my parents. Any competitive sport in India is very expensive. So decided to then take my love for swimming and transition into a swim coaching role.
Wow, what an incredible journey, especially when, Indian society or society in general will always tell you to go on a treaded path, which is, which people have been there before. People have, millions of people would always tell you that, study kar lo, then, take up a job or take up a government job and apply for this. And that is like the set pattern in India. Do an engineering, get a job, get in an IT company or a government job, and you're set. But to be able to, take a uncharted territory where nobody has ever done that before, that would have been a very difficult as well as a sort of groundbreaking kind of a decision for you. So amazing that you did that.
Yeah, like you said, from the time I started, swimming is not the typical sport that you would look at. A lot of my family and friends would say, why are you doing it? And, my grandmother would even say, you're getting so tanned, you're in the sun the whole day. Who will marry you? Things like this. Very typical mentality that, myths that the old-fashioned way of thinking. But I just stood for what I believed in, said, I know I'm very passionate about my swimming. I'm going to get to the Olympics, and I did. And post that, I realized I want to spread that joy of swimming, the joy that I felt, and I want to do it in a fun way. Make adults and kids, anybody who gets into the water, it doesn't matter if you get that Olympic medal. Yes, we always aim for that, but it's also about getting most of India to learn swimming. It's a life-saving skill, right? You can save a life, you can get fitter, and yes, one day you could win that medal. And a lot of people said, like you mentioned, go and take that government job. Apply for, you can get a place with the police or railways. They'll give you a good position being an Olympian. But I said, I don't want to have that desk job. I want to go out there and do what I love. So even till today, it's been, almost 20 years now since I started my academy. It's not a single day where I think of it as work. I'm still getting up. I'm still a kid who loves to go and swim. My friends say I've not changed. When they see me, I'm still tanned. I'm still a swimsuit is my work clothes, and I still smell of chlorine, right? So at the end of the day, I'm living my dream, and I'm doing it as a passion, like you said. It's not a profession, it's a passion for me.
And for the society, aunties or people just comment, you did get married and you did have two beautiful children.
I always say I'm married. My husband's so good looking and fair, and my kids look as white as can be, but when they get into swimming pools, they also get nice and tanned. And I tell them tanning is amazing. When I went to Australia, people would look at me and come touch my skin and say, wow, we love your tan. And I say, yeah, for us it's natural. So I'm really proud of it. At my wedding day, I was wearing a gown, and everyone could see my tan. And the makeup artist said, do you want me to cover it up with makeup? I said, no, I'm proud of it. I'm a swimmer. Like, in fact, now it's probably the fairest anyone will ever see me because pools have been closed, right? So that's why you can see my normal color. Others are 10 shades darker, and I don't care. It's just, occupational hazard.
So first off the bat, I want to ask a couple of really popular questions from YouTube. All right. The first question is how to learn swimming in this form. And there are literally 2-minute videos also teaching people how to swim. So is it possible to watch those 2-minute videos and learn swimming? How to get started, how to learn swimming?
Yeah, don't follow that 2-minute. There were some classes in Mumbai where they say learn swimming in one day. It's really not possible. Even if you think about how when we were kids, how we learned to walk when we were babies, if you see them progressing, it takes a lot of time from first crawling, then to move to standing with support, without support, and walking. Swimming is the same because you have to understand water is a different medium. If you're taking up something like running, you anyway can jog. You just have to learn how to improve your technique maybe. But swimming, you're dealing with a separate element. You're in water. There's a lot of buoyancy. You don't have balance. You don't need to learn how to breathe. So the first thing you need to do is get in the water and start to learn to enjoy it. That's the first thing, because there is a fear for everyone. So if you introduce them at a very young age, so we've started something called toddler classes where we get parents to bring the 6-month, 1-year-old babies into the water to play. We're not teaching them how to swim. We're teaching them what we call water familiarization, which is getting into the water, enjoying it, learning how your body moves, feels, reacts to the water, how you can push and pull and move forward. And that's the first step. Once you do that, even for an adult, say you're 60 years old, you've been very scared, go into your building pool or into a club pool with somebody you trust. Just walk around, splash. You'll get water in your eyes. You blink, it comes out. If it gets into your mouth, you spit it out. So you just enjoy it first. And then you start learning something like, how do I go underwater, breathe out? So unless you can put your face in and be comfortable underwater, you can't learn how to swim. So people tell me, I know how to swim. I say, do you put your face in? No, I keep my face out. That's not really swimming. So you have to learn to breathe. Then things like, learning the strokes. And the very important part, once you do that, you learn the freestyle, backstroke, breaststroke, butterfly. What's even more important is to learn how to stay afloat in a deep pool. So if you're learning in a shallow pool, go to a pool where you have a coach who's helping you out, teach you how to stay afloat. Even if it's your maybe father who's going with you, always go with someone. Don't just suddenly one day go and jump into the ocean and think you can swim. A very important thing, you will be surprised. In India, we have drowning is the third most common accidental death in the country. Even more than COVID, if you look at it. So we're so worried about COVID. We should be giving a lot of importance to something like drowning, which is happening every day. Hundreds of people are drowning because there are, unfenced pools. There are small lakes and rivers, and people don't know how to stay afloat in a deep water body. So that's something that we really need to change.
Wow. That is an interesting statistic. Third most, the third biggest reason for accident.
Accidental deaths in India.
I didn't know that. Second most popular question on YouTube and society in general is that whenever someone wants to lose weight, the first thing that people tell people is to start swimming. Can swimming help in losing weight?
Definitely.
Yes.
Definitely.
How? If no, why?
Definitely, because there's 800 times more resistance in the water than on land. So just walking in the water can help you lose weight. Suppose you have a knee injury or you're an elderly person or a pregnant woman, you can just use water, walking, jogging. The same thing you do on land, you do it in water, you're burning more calories because of the resistance. Now, if you have to do a workout, yes. If you do butterfly or the freestyle, you burn a lot more calories. And one good tip I have for all the people listening is just take a kickboard, the float that you hold on when you learn how to swim.
Yeah.
Hold on to that, keep your head up so you can even chat with your friend or who's swimming with you or your parent outside the water. And you can just kick with your legs. Only move your legs and do the freestyle kick. That's one of the easiest way to really burn those calories. It's great cardio. You'll come out feeling fresh. You'll feel energized. You'll, the adrenaline will be pumping. You'll go into your work day or your school or your college feeling really good about it. So yes, you can lose a lot of weight, but it also depends on how much time you take rest in between. If you're chatting half the time and just standing around the water, yes, you may not lose that weight. So it is a great sport, and one of the reasons it's great is also you will not get injured. So you can do more. You can keep building up that endurance without the worry of an injury. But if you run a marathon, you could very possibly get injured. If you swim a similar distance, the good chance that you won't if you're training well. So that's the benefit of being in the water. So yes, go for it if you want to swim, especially post-COVID. All of us have put on a little bit of COVID weight. We need to get it out. Get into your apartment pool, do some kicking, do some jogging, or there's even aqua fitness now, which is really picking up.
Yeah.
Aqua Pilates, aqua Zumba. I don't do that myself because I find swimming is a lot more effective. But if that's something that you enjoy, you want to dance while you're in the pool, great, go ahead and do it.
Sure. Also, what I think with any sport, swimming included, is that if you are looking to lose weight, you have to manage your calorie intake and out the burn. Yeah. So ultimately, even if you're going to the pool, an average time that you spend in the pool for that pool workout is about 45 to 50 minutes. And probably if you utilize the entire time, you would burn about 600 to 700 calories. But if you come out and then start consuming much more, thinking that you've worked out, that weight loss will certainly not happen. So ultimately,
I think with any sport, the great point where if you're not minding your calories, which is my problem when I quit swimming, we eat really high calorie diets as swimmers, because I was swimming about 16 kilometers a day. So you can imagine that.
Wow.
6 in the morning, 8 in the evening. Yeah, that's a lot. 8 in the morning, 8 in the evening in 2 sessions, but 6 days a week. So I could eat pretty much anything. In fact, I needed to have a very high calorie diet, a lot of carbs, a lot of pasta, potatoes, non-veg, whatever it is. So I was actually losing weight. My body weight would go down. So I had to eat more to keep it constant. So when I stopped swimming, then you realize, oh my God, I really have to cut back on those calories because you're never expending as much as when you're a competitive athlete, right? Swimming just a 1 kilometer, 2 kilometer workout like I do now compared to 16 kilometers is a huge change. So even though I'm in the water, I'm very mindful. And water, I don't know if you found, but if you swam, Nishant, you'll know. I mean, I know you're a triathlete as well, but you'll find you feel really hungry when you come out. You feel that hunger because you're using your entire body. It's an entire, it's a full body workout, unlike a lot of other sports. And it also calms you down a bit. So, like even when you go back home, you feel really nice, relaxed. You feel like eating some comfort food and having a nice sleep. So don't be fooled by that. If you're training and you want to lose weight, do a good workout, push yourself a bit, get your heart rate up, hydrate well. But when you come out, don't overdo the food as well. It's not a magic potion.
Swimming, what happens is your full body blood circulation is much better than when you're doing a vertical kind of a workout. That's why normally when people do a transition in a triathlon, when they come out of the water, suddenly they stand up, the heart rate goes up drastically because of the horizontal to vertical transition. And that's also one of the reasons that you feel so hungry, because you've been dissipating so much water. So many parts of your body which normally do not even get used, but in a swimming workout, you utilizing all your body parts.
Actually, if you're swimming in open water, right, even more so, because you're not dealing with a flat, calm pool. You're dealing with nature and all its glory. Whether it's currents, whether it's other people swimming next to you, it's a very tough environment. So triathletes really need to up their calories even more when they're training, because they're burning so much in that swim leg. Even in a race, you need to make sure that when you're swimming and you come out, you make sure that you adequately hydrate and refuel on your bike element.
Certainly. This segueing into a similar topic is what is a primary difference between a triathlete swimmer and a pro swimmer, or maybe a intermediate kind of a swimmer only in doing swimming workout versus a triathlete swimmer? How are they different, and what are the different muscle groups that they are utilizing?
I would say that triathletes are much more conscious about the fact that they're going to use their legs, and the rest of their race is very leg dominant. So you have your bike and your run, which is so much of legs, and cycling, there's a lot of back involved as well, but the upper body not as much in the other two elements, right? So I think what triathletes make a mistake of doing is only work on their upper body in the swim. They swim with only their arms. But what happens then is that you don't work on your body position. And most triathletes who come to me, the head is here and their legs are here. So that's very, very bad, right? You're dragging the legs along with you. You don't have great body position. You're putting extra effort on the arms, and your arms are much smaller muscles, right? You want to engage all the bigger muscle groups as well. So what I tell the triathletes is, when you're in the pool training, you have to train the legs as well. You need to push the legs. Like I said, kicking is one of the best ways to build your aerobic base as well. So I make my triathletes do a lot of kicking. When they're actually competing, yes, they will not do what we call a 6-beat kick. So a competitive swimmer like me, for one stroke, which is your right and your left hand, by the time you finish, you do 3 full kicks, which is up and down of each leg. So it's called a 6-beat kick. A triathlete might stick to a 2-beat kick, but you need to have that kick. I hate people just crossing over the legs. Unless you're doing a long swim, like a 10K or more, you need to have that medium kick going to maintain that nice, streamlined position in the water. That will help you cut through the water much faster. And it, more than anything, it balances out your stroke.
Yeah.
Right? That's the reason. So competitive swimmers are so strong. If you see somebody like a Michael Phelps, you swim behind them. It's almost like swimming behind a huge wave. It pushes you to the side. Yeah, it's insane, That's the motor driving you forward. And some of the top coaches in competitive swimming, they talk about sometimes doing an entire set, 6 to 8 kilometers, only kick. Vertical kicking, where you're not touching the pool floor, kicking with the kickboard, kicking in streamline, side kicking of all the different strokes. So with triathletes, the only difference is you need to pretty much only concentrate on freestyle, because if you're doing other strokes, you should know it. Like if you can do breaststroke, you can sight better sometimes if you can't see well in your freestyle. Going onto your back is great to adjust your goggles, or if it's a long swim, like if you're an open water swimmer, they allow a boat to give you some, your guide boat can give you some hydration and fuel. Then you lie on your back and you do that, it's easier. But it's definitely important to be very comfortable. So deep water treading, right?
Yeah.
That's something we do a lot of with triathletes, how to be really comfortable in the deep pool. With competitive athletes, it's more about, our max distance is 1,500 meters, right?
Yeah.
For triathletes, you go to to a full Ironman, you're doing much bigger distances. So you need to get that good aerobic basin. So especially since we've been out of the pool for so long, the triathletes really need to focus on swimming, which normally is their weak link, right?
Yeah.
Running, almost everyone is good, decently, decent at. Cycling is easy to scale up, but swimming is where you have to work on your technique, because open water is slightly different. Sighting is different. Use your arms a little more. It's tough to keep a nice high elbow when you're swimming in a very choppy water, right? Even my stroke is just about surviving. It's about using more power to push forward. So there's so many different elements that separate competitive swimmers and triathletes. But you should also have triathletes come in and experience the regular workouts, because they get a more well-balanced idea. What are these guys doing? Learning drills. Like we do a lot of drills like you do on land or on the bike. We do so many swim drills which are very important, which I use on my triathletes as well. So what I don't do with my triathletes, I don't do something called individual medleys, where I do all the 4 strokes, butterfly, back, breaststroke. I don't do that training for my triathletes because they don't need it. It's primarily freestyle.
Understood. Triathlon is a growing sport in India, and recently, just about 1.5 years ago, we had the first Ironman 70.3 also happen, and there are a lot of smaller events also which are now shaping up in India. So as a triathlete, the biggest fear usually is the open water swimming, and that's a fear which even I had, but a few sessions in the sea told me that this is doable, we can do once your technique is okay. What are some of the things you would like to tell our viewers, because about majority of our listeners are triathletes and so how do they go about approaching the open water swim, and what are the major myths which are around there which they should not be so worried about?
I would say that even I realized this, because initially I was only into teaching swimming and competitive swimming. Then when we had a 50-meter pool in Bangalore, we had a lot of triathletes coming to us, and like you said, they were comfortable in a shallow pool. First, we had to get them used to a deeper pool. We had a 16 feet deep end, so that helped. So getting them that deep water familiarization helped. What we call sculling. So that's something all triathletes need to learn, how to do a vertical float, what we call a vertical float. So you're not moving forward, you're staying in one place, a motionless vertical float. And if you can do that, if you can stay afloat in vertically, that's one of the main issues. Then later on, we realized also that, like you said, there's not enough, information about triathlon. So I, partnered with some of the Bangalore, top coaches in different sports, cycling and running, and we formed something called Life of Tri, where we just guide athletes. It's not that they all train with us, but it's a lot of workshops to educate them. Some of them approach us separately. And what we've realized is that fear factor is really huge in the open water, like you said. One is you can't see the flow. Number two, I keep telling people you don't want to see what's underneath. In the ocean and in a river, you don't want to know, right? So what you need to do is you have to do those practices in an open water body. I would suggest first going to a very calm, small lake. You need to always be accompanied by a strong swimmer, preferably a coach who knows how to save lives and to rescue. And you should also have, even that person, if you're in the middle of a lake, will not be able to rescue you all the way to the edge. So preferably, whenever I go with all my triathletes, especially for beginners, or even with the advanced level athletes, we have a kayak and one person with a lifeguard with extra life jackets inside the kayak to accompany us. So as a swimmer, I think I respect the ocean and the open water even more, because you know how strong nature is. In the pool, it's very, very peaceful. You have 2 lane lines. We have these anti-wave lanes. So the waves don't really travel to the next lane even. But if you're in open water, that can be very unnerving. I remember my husband, who runs the academy with me, he wasn't a competitive swimmer, but he's a good swimmer. He improved when he met me. Then we started the academy. He was great in the pool. He could even rescue people, do all that. His first open water swim, we jumped off into the ocean from a boat in Goa. I remember the panic on his face, like I can't see anything. He's wearing his goggles. I'm like, stop worrying about that. Then it's like, he's trying to stay near the boat and he's going further away. Then you start panicking and using more energy and trying to fight it. You need to learn to relax. That's my number 1 tip for people. If you don't relax, you'll start having breathing
Panic
issues.
Yeah.
You start panicking. You can actually, in a longer swim, you can even, see things that are not there. Like you might think, oh my God, is that, some a weed or a branch will touch you and you think it's a shark. It's very common. And you do have to, I know so many times even I've been stung by jellyfish. It's very common. So talk to triathletes who've been there, done that. Go with a beginner level group. First get used to a deep pool. Then get used to a calm open water environment. Then you move on to the sea. And what I would say in the ocean, which is something even I'm scared of, you might laugh because I'm an Olympic swimmer, but going into the ocean, right, where the waves are breaking is very unnerving to me because I don't have any control. Once when I was much younger, a wave came over my head. I turned to talk to my dad. The wave came over my head and I toppled, So even for me, I'm still not so comfortable. Obviously, I'm much better now. Yeah. But I prefer when I take triathletes for the first time into an ocean, I jump off the boat and we swim towards the shore. So as you're getting more tired, which I typically reach, I always have a kickboard. I have a noodle if they can hold. The boat is always there. So at least you know that you're going to finish on solid ground. It's not that it's. And when you're swimming, always have a well-defined course with markers, right? If you're going to go straight out, it's very, very scary. Better to swim parallel to the shore. The other thing I think you really need to get used to is swimming without your wetsuit. Some are very happy with the wetsuit, gives you a little extra buoyancy. That plus the sea bottle.
That doesn't work in the Indian environment anymore.
Exactly. You don't have wetsuit swims, with the tries. So like say the Goa half Ironman, you won't be able to use a wetsuit. And then, especially the full body ones, there's so many rules. So first of all, familiarize yourself with
most of the Asian races would not have the wetsuit.
So get used to swimming with and without.
Yeah.
And, zipping it up, taking it off in transitions if you're wearing a wetsuit. True. So those are the few things, but open water can be easily managed. Sighting is very important and sticking to a group. I would say that's the best thing you could do because you do get a bit of drag, just like how you try and draft off someone in cycling. We call it drag in swimming. You drag behind the people, but you try and stay near their hip or just behind their feet, but you don't want to get kicked. That's the only thing. But if you use those few techniques, staying calm, sighting regularly, and I sight almost every 5 to 6 arms. Even though I swim pretty straight, even if it's open water, but if it is a lot more choppy, even I will go, of course, any swimmer will. So you need to sight, ensure that you're going, shortest point from point A to B. You don't want to be going in a nice big circle, for a big tour of the whole course.
Understood. All right. A related question for the triathletes who are aiming for their next Ironman races or any triathlons which are coming up. What are the top 5 equipments that they should buy for themselves for practice or for racing? And what are the kind of equipments they can rent as well? So renting versus buying, and some equipments that they can purchase and keep it for themselves.
The good thing about swimming, I know because I deal with these triathletes that we work with as Life of Tri, but cycling is such an expensive sport. All your funds go there, right?
I did answer that. In fact, 2-time world record breaker, Colonel Bharat Pannu, you might have heard about his name. So we were answering these exact questions in the last week episode, that is cycling an expensive sport? Do you need all of that and all? And so he beautifully answered, but in summary, the short answer was that it's probably not as expensive to begin with, but as you progress,
yes, definitely. I think you want that 5-6 lakh bike and the fancy trainer and the full gear and the cleats. Everything gets so expensive when you put it all together. Swimming, I keep it very simple. You need a kickboard, a pull buoy, flippers, and paddles. So typically, if you're doing, you want to use only the legs, work on your legs. Then what you do is you hold a kickboard and you put flippers on. Sometimes you do kicking without flippers, but that kickboard is very important. Number 2, you use a pull buoy. That will isolate only your upper body. You don't move your legs at all. And a great way to increase the efficiency in the water, put a little bit of resistance also into your training, is to add the paddles, which you put onto your hand, the swim paddles. That gives you greater surface area, good feel of the water, really works on your shoulders. And a lot of triathletes, if you notice, obviously have weaker upper body when they do lower body, right? So you need to really work on that, work on your core. And the last piece of equipment I would say is a really good pair of goggles. So goggles, very important. Preferably get, especially since most of the tri races will start early morning and it does get sunny, you'll have sunrise. Get a pair of I wouldn't say totally dark goggles. You get these smoke goggles. That's great.
Monochrome type of.
Monochrome, yeah. Because otherwise it's very, very tough and the sun is in your eyes. It's horrible.
Sure.
You're already dealing with so many open water elements.
Yeah.
A great tip for triathletes, I'm sure a lot of them know already, but put one swim cap on, your goggles and another swim cap. Or goggles first and then cap over it. Yeah, because that was the easiest thing when you have those, race starts where everyone's going, the group starts. It's crazy. My God, triathletes are quite rough. Like I would be rough. As a swimmer,
I've had a couple of cuts here because of this.
Cuts. Like I would do that. I'd be like, get out of my way, So I'm very competitive. So a lot of triathletes are like that, and your goggles will fly off. Yeah. Especially, if you wear contacts, don't. Make sure you get a good pair of powered goggles. Easy enough to get at any power. The top brands like Decathlon, Speedo, they all have them. Check, and then you can see. You don't have to wear contacts. Imagine if you get salt water or you lose a contact, it's terrible. So make sure you do that. That will really help you. The goggles, kickboard, pull buoy, paddles, and flippers. That's all you need. The rest of it is all about working on your technique. You don't really need too much of equipment otherwise. That's right. Now that the lockdown has happened, if you want to do some kind of swim specific strength in the house, it helps to do a little bit with stretch cords. You get particular swim stretch cords which have paddles on them. Okay. So at the edge, normally they have handles, the swimming ones have paddles. So you can even, at least practice, simulate the same movements, whether it's freestyle, the finish of your freestyle. You can do that on land, but there's only so much you can do on land. The rest has to be done in the water.
In the pool itself, yeah. And what are your thoughts on renting equipment, especially a wetsuit? Some triathletes may find it difficult, and also because the number of times you'll be wearing it would be very low. So what are your thoughts on it?
I would say yes, wetsuits are very expensive. Number one, rent it and try it out first. You have to do it in a practice swim.
Sure.
Suddenly when you get in, it feels like it's constricting you. If you're wearing something that's too tight. If it's too loose, you'll have the opposite issue with water going in and you feel like you're going to you feel very heavy. So you want something that's comfortable, where you're able to move your arms. I like anything which is sleeveless because I hate anything on my arms. You do get obviously great tri-suits you see all the top guys wearing. Now they've advanced so much, but you may not get them in India.
Sure.
So I know now you're able to get, some of the brands have brought in tri-suits, but try it on, and yes, that is something you could rent. But the other equipment is really not expensive. You can have this, and you need to have your own. In these COVID times, you don't want to share too much. At our pools, we always keep kickboards and pull buoys, but when people use it, they go put it in another area, so other people use fresh ones, Just simple equipment, altogether you might spend 3,000 to 4,000 rupees, and you can use it for the rest of your life. You don't have to keep buying these things. I have my same kit bag for like probably 15 years or something.
In fact, I keep telling my athletes also that in the entire 3 sports that you do, swim, bike, run, and strength also, swimming is probably the most inexpensive sport, which but also would require you to overcome a lot of physiological and psychological barriers. But pocket wise, it's a pretty pocket friendly sport. All right, so we have reached to the last segment of our show, where I would be asking you a lot of questions in quick succession. You would have to answer them very quickly. It's a rapid fire round, all right?
Rapid fire, okay, bring it on.
Yeah, and a disclaimer for the viewers, these are not rigged. We have not shared the question. In fact, none of the questions were shared with her prior to the interview. All right, are you ready?
I'm ready, go for it.
All right. What is your most favorite brand for swimming apparels?
Speedo and Decathlon. Speedo for competition, Decathlon for practice.
All right. What are your top 3 swimming destinations where you would like to swim, or you've already swum before?
I've swum in Menorca in Spain. That's one of the most beautiful places I've been to. Barcelona as well. I swum in Australia. So definitely, I think the foreign water bodies I've enjoyed more. Closer to home, I love the Andamans. Flat, a great place to start your open water journey is go swim in the Andamans.
All right. Okay. What are your thoughts on people who are looking to get started in the sport? Thoughts on starting in the open water versus in pool water?
First, pool water, get proficient, get confident, and do your deep water training also first in the pool, and then you transition to open water. Don't go to the open water directly. You have to have that pool background, and even your training will primarily be in the pool. Only maybe 10 to 20% of your training needs to be in open water.
All right. Swimming is notoriously famous for 8,000, 10,000 calorie consumption when people, pros like you, are training. What were the top 5 foods which you used to consume for piling on these calories?
I would say bananas, tons of them. I don't know how many per day. We would have a lot of ragi malt early morning to give us that sustained energy. And my personal favorite was a lot of non-veg. So chicken, fish, whatever I could have. So the nights when I could go to sleep, get a good heavy dinner in, and then have a nice sleep. So really, it's a lot about just eating food that you love. And as much as I love junk food, staying away from some of that. Keep that as a treat.
All right. Okay. 2 milestones which you always wanted to achieve, but you were not able to achieve, or you would want to do that in the future.
So one thing is, of course, going for my second Olympics, which I missed. But on a personal note, right now, you laugh because I help triathletes all the time, but I still don't know how to cycle. I cycled last when I was 5 or 6 years, and I was swimming for so many years. I'm not saying I don't know. I haven't cycled for so many years. So my goal is next year I turn 40. I'm going to run a full marathon, which I'm quite confident of doing. I want to run a fast time, I should say, and I'm going to at least do maybe a sprint try, because I need to get my cycling up to the level where I can at least do a sprint try. Once I get that, I'm sure I'll be full-time, trying to race, because I'm very, very competitive. I'll say I'm going to go have fun. I never go into a race to have fun. I always go to win, to at least do my best, to really push myself.
All right. What we can do is you can make me a better swimmer, and probably I can guide you a little bit on cycling.
Super, you got it.
Let's do that. A barter, which is live, cannot be taken away now.
Okay, you're right.
All right. What are your top 3 drills for a beginner or to intermediate athlete in swimming?
Yeah, I would say, first of all, a lot of side breathing drills. So when you turn to your side to breathe, you need to ensure that your legs keep kicking. So we do side breathing and side kicking, because people only do normal kick. You turn to the side to breathe, your legs turn to the side as well. So you need to practice the side kick. Another very important one is a high elbow, so fingertip drag. Just touching your fingertips to the surface when you're swimming. Just ensures a higher elbow. It stops you from just throwing your arms. Yes, when you go into open water, you will have a little bit of that, but it's good to have, really good technique. It also saves your shoulders, gives you a lot more, stability in your stroke. And the third thing would be to learn how to breathe to both sides, what we call bilateral breathing, because especially in a try, if the sun is on one side, you'll always be comfortable at least to breathe to your non-dominant hand whenever you need it, or you want to see where your competitor is, you want to sight, you want to look for a buoy. You need to be comfortable breathing to both sides.
Sure. What are your top 2 favorite sports movies?
Sports movies. My God, I have so many. I would say definitely I watched Ali. So Muhammad Ali, what a great guy. Blown away by it. And oh my God, I'm trying to think. There's so many good sports movies that, I love Dangal. I watched Saina recently. So any sports movie, especially with an Indian athlete, I haven't watched Mary Kom as yet, and I know her, so I'd love to watch that.
Bhag Milkha Bhag.
Yes, of course. The great Milkha Singh, rest in peace. He passed away recently.
Yeah.
But amazing guy. I got to meet him. I got the Arjuna Award with his son. So those 2 movies are on my to-do list. I think all kids should see it, because we have so many Indian sports people that can inspire us. So why not get our kids to watch it? My kids loved Saina. They just started playing badminton. Yeah. One of my best friends, Aparna's, was a double Olympian in badminton. So we loved the movie, and they got so excited the next day. They were up on the terrace playing badminton. So we need to encourage our kids to watch those movies and get inspired.
Certainly. All right. What is your favorite sports nutrition and hydration brand?
Definitely Fast Enough. I'd say that's without a doubt. Hydration was something we didn't know much about. Only before the Olympics, they taught me how to, look at your pee when you go, to make sure you're hydrated enough. And these are all new things for us almost at the Olympic level. Now people are very well aware that not only water, but you need the electrolytes in there. Certainly. So I love Fast Enough because it's not expensive, good flavors. Like when I go for my runs or my swims, I mix it up all the time. They have kids version now, so even younger kids can have it. And at the end of the day, you don't want to hit that wall because you didn't hydrate or didn't eat. So yes, I'm not a big fan of gels. I find it very difficult. I prefer good old-fashioned, a banana or a nice Snickers bar at the end of a long race. But otherwise I would say Fast Enough, really, they're doing a lot, I feel, in the sport, not just for the sports people, but even for general nutrition. So yes, get that for sure.
Yep. All right. Last question. What is your favorite sports apparel or shoes brand?
Oh my God, I have so many. Right now, I run mostly Nike because I find them very light. Oh my God, I've got so many, but one of the free runs, I don't have the fancy ones. I don't spend too much of money because I'm not that good at, and if I'm at that level where I'm winning podiums regularly, yes, I'll do that. I have a first chance at a team relay podium coming up soon with my running group called Pacemakers in Bangalore. So hopefully that'll be my first running podium as a team.
Wow.
But I just wear the Nike, anything that's very, very light. I don't like heavy shoes at all. And I just feel like at the end of the day, I have right now we're training as part of Elevate, which is my new venture. We're training somebody called Thomas Bobby Phillip, who's very popular in the running circle. He's the barefoot runner. So I look at him and I wonder, wow, I must try that someday. But I think of the Indian roads and I'm like, maybe not.
All right. Thank you so much for those beautiful answers. Before we close the show for today, I would want the last parting shots, parting words for our viewers. Why more and more people should start their journey in endurance sports such as swimming or triathlon or running.
Yes. It's great. I see so much of passion and so much of enthusiasm especially in the amateurs, the masters age groups. Sometimes I find, older athletes are much more motivated, intrinsically motivated, where the parents are not dragging you to the sport. You're not stressed with schoolwork. You're doing it because you want to. Even if you have a job, you're getting up early and doing a 25K run or a 50K bike. So it's amazing to me, but I also feel that you need to be very knowledgeable about what you're putting your body through because you don't want to have issues later on in life. Yeah. So that's why three of us have formed this team where, we're trying to tell athletes, get knowledge first, make sure you recover well, make sure you learn about technique. And a very important thing for all, athletes at all levels is you have to strength train. This is something I wish I had done more of when I was a swimmer. We didn't do any strength training, which is why I had a very bad shoulder issue because we have overuse injuries in swimming. Make sure you see a proper a sports doctor for your rehab and make sure that the strength training is sports specific. So there's no use of you doing something that will not translate into the pool or into your bike. I know people who just start their, long bike rides, they have so many back issues because it's such an unnatural position to go down there on those aero bars. So what I would say is talk to as many people as you want, watch podcasts like this, watch the races, really study your sport, and then you'll enjoy it more because then you can take that and put it into your own practice.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks for those.
Nothing at the end of the day, nothing can substitute from really that training, practicing regularly, practicing smart, training smart, resting, and at the end of the day, do it because you love the sport.
Absolutely. Wow, those are some beautiful words from someone coming who's been training for over 30 years now. That's just amazing.
Yes,
you rightly pointed out, the importance of strength and conditioning. Strength training, and I would say stretching as well. So that's something
mobility and flexibility is very important.
Yeah, that is something that we do every week. In fact, all our triathletes and runners in Trifantry need to go through these 2 hours of strength and conditioning workouts, which I personally take on live with the athletes, because when I was training, I understood the importance of strength and conditioning. When you put your body every day through such long endurance hours, it's not getting repaired and it's not getting strengthened as well. So it's very important to build in these strength conditioning programs, stretching, as well as rest, which you rightly highlighted.
Don't neglect it, because I know triathletes have 3 sports to train for.
Yeah.
But you think of the 4th one as strength, and you think that you have to do it.
It has
and you do it more in off season, but you continue throughout. You can maybe reduce the number of days, but make sure you're doing effective movements. So that's why it's good that you need to have a coach who's guiding you as well. That's most important.
Sure. On that note, thank you so much, Nisha, for doing this.
Thanks,
and
Nisha.
Your time and sharing your valuable 30 years of experience brought down in this 40 minutes. Thank you so much. I wish you the best and hope to see you soon in Bangalore.
Thank you. See you later.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Thanks.